Hello guys, welcome to my fourth tutorial. And this one, I had some cool reactions for my first tutorials, and someone asked me, hey, how does how can we make soft bodies, or how can we make break objects, and how to make liquids inside TP. And I've decided to make a tutorial that explains a little bit of all of these features from thinkingParticles 6.2 now. So let me start showing the preview of the tutorial with the magnificent music. Beautiful stuff. And the video here. So let's see. Okay, let's stop the music or I'll get to sleep, and let's open the file. And so this is a little story just to have some fun while doing the tutorial. And of course my daughters love to see what I'm doing. Now they are asleep, so I'm making this tutorial. So here we go. So I have normal particles burning from a path from a spline. Then I change to a smoke group, so I'm changing groups and I'm going to show you. Then for this tutorial, and to be uh, almost in real time, I've decided to make a small percentage of the particles to become soft bodies. So this is just like less than 1% of the particles become soft bodies, and then they become rigid. So, and I've used something cool so you can understand the difference between bullet physics and SC from TP. So the collisions from the thinking particles and not the bullet physics. And to finish up, I've made liquids. So I'm going to explain now how this works in TP. So let's start. Okay, so first of all, I have here the play that means that I've cached this animation, so it's faster on the viewport, but I will remove this uh, afterwards. So let me check where to position this. Okay, I'm going to, okay, and just the front view, and let's start. So here, so this is kind of a beginner's tutorial, so it's simple stuff. Here we have the groups, particle groups, and here we have the rules for them. I'm used to create in the master dynamic, when you start a file, I'm used to create a bunch of dynamic sets and then move them and rename this one for system. Well, it can be anything you want, but and then you open and you have a lot of, you can create a lot of rules. So I've created the first one. It's the normal particles. Okay, so the particles were given the first wish, and the first wish was to become smoke. So after creating, I'm going to explain how I did create this. So Okay, let's show. So we have in TP, you can create black boxes, and these ones come with TP. So I have generators, and so you want to generate particles, and you want to create particles along a path. So if you create here, you will see that it creates a bunch of operators for you. So this comes with TP, and you can create your own. So this is how I started, with a predefined birth, and then I just have to choose the position from a path, from this, in this case, a circle. So let me just show here. Okay, here is the magnificent circle. Okay, so, and it creates on this circle, and then you have to define the velocity, and the velocity is here. Okay, we have the speed and the speed variation and the direction, so it's in x positive. So we create, and there it goes from x. And now I want to change group, so I've created another one, another master dynamic, another dynamic set, not the master dynamic, the dynamic set, and it's smoke. And usually I create with this kind of structure. So this is the creation. You have to create something, and then you have to set up what you want. If you want dynamics, usually I can make dynamics or something like that, but here I used smoke setup, and then the solver. Okay, this is something that I learned with Fabian, and he always mentioned that we should have the solver at the end. So, and I have this rule, not a rule, I'm used to create a different one, so I never forget, and it's always at the end of our setup. So how do I create the particles for smoke? It's kind of easy. Well, I choose first a group here, the normal one. So I'm picking up an existing group, and I'm saying that when this group is inside this mesh, and I have to define the mesh, so this box here, so when the particles come inside, they change group. Or in this case, I didn't make change group, I did make a position born and a particle die. So when the normal particles come inside this mesh that I'm giving here, I feed with the particle dies, so the normal particles die, and then the new ones are created. And why did I did this and did not just change the particles? Because I could change here like this. Okay, when it's inside this mesh, it will change the group. I'm just putting this on, and I choose here to go to smoke. But why didn't I do this? Because I've started with few particles, and you will learn if you try to make smoke that few particles don't give you a good behavior, or it's well, it gives the correct behavior, but when you have more smoke, the movement is more interesting, like this one here. Okay, so that's why I deleted the normal particles, and then I've created 15 particles. So I multiplied by 15 the original particles, because each particle will create 15 when they arrive inside this mesh. And okay, so This is the explaining how to create. Now let's explain the forces and the setup from the smoke. So here, the smoke, first I make a force. And how do I do this? Okay, it's simple. You go to groups, you select smoke, then I use a lot of the tab, and I know I want to apply a force, and I want to apply a 0.3 vector, so I'm going to change here, choose here on the helpers, and then I say I want this force to be applied on this particle and with this direction. Okay, and then you define here the direction, and here it's simple, it's in X. So let me just remove this. Okay, and you have a force of 25 in X positive, so the particles still are going this way, and that's it. And I have 25% of variation. Okay, so this is the initial force, and then it enters the smoke group. Well, how to make the smoke group? It's simple. You go here, operators, and smoke group. Okay, cool. So here you choose the rules for this, the rules or the behaviors. You have a lot of things here that you can study, and what I usually do, and you have to be very careful with using smoke and other stuff like liquids, and it's the scale of your setup, especially when you are trying to do soft bodies and even rigid bodies. If you have a really large scale or a very small scale scene, you will have erratic behaviors, and it will not it, it will not be what you are expecting to be. So be careful with your scale of the scene and the objects and so on. So here on the smoke group, when you start a new smoke group operator, okay, uh, you don't have anything here, so you have none, 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 and you have to choose a smoke solver that is created here. So when if this smoke solver is not here, you will not find it when you are here. It will be not available. So you have to create the solver, and the solver, it's a Cebas solver, external solver. You don't have settings, you just have to go operators, smoke, and smoke solver, and as simple as that. Okay, nothing too complex. And here on the smoke group, you choose the smoke solver, and you say which group it's to become, will become the smoke, and as simple as that. And then you have all these settings. Okay, I will not talk about these settings. I think you will have to find for yourself. I'm just because there are too many, and of course you'll learn a lot if you try. So let me just tell you what I've changed from the standard smoke group. So the temperature, I don't want the smoke to go up or down. I don't want to cool down, so I want, because if I have a cooling rate, it will stop, and I want to continue to go to the next object. So I've disabled this, and here I've changed the vorticity, so we have more curly stuff. Oops, let me just go here. Now this Windows stuff. Let me just go. Okay, so I've changed a little bit the atmospheric disturbance and the size, and that's it. I've changed a little bit the viscosity, and the rest, I think it's pretty standard values. I didn't change a lot, and that's it. But well, you know, sometimes when you start to make the first smoke simulation and so on, it's not so easy because there are these values, all these values. But after reading the manual and trying a little bit, you can get really good results without losing too much time. Okay, so that's it for the smoke. I hope you understand it. It's pretty simple to make this setup. And of course, now we are going to the next one. Hey, the particle said, yeah, I want to become soft body, like jelly. Whee! And this is really fun when I'm with my kids, but with you it's not so funny, but it doesn't matter. So, cool. They become soft bodies. How? Let's see. Okay, the same methods. I'm going to pick up the smoke and I'm going to say in mesh on this mesh. Okay, so when they come inside this mesh, again they die, and this is okay, something that I made to born just a percentage, a very small percentage, like you see. So it's 0.1. And how to make to check and evaluate how many particles and the percentage. So it's kind of simple. So each particle will generate a value from 0 to 100. So this is not really a percentage because they are creating randomly these values and they can repeat. But it works, kind of work like this. And because if it was 100 particles, maybe this was exact, but it doesn't matter. For what you want to do is to choose a small percentage, a small quantity of the particles. So we create 0 from 100, so each particle is creating a random number, and you have to check this animation, because if it's like this per call, each particle will call a number per frame, and this one calls one value for the whole animation. So you have to be careful with this. And then I'd say a condition. So let me just show you how to pick up this. So this is a helper math random, and this is a condition. So condition standard thresholds. Okay, and you are saying that inside these values I want to pick from this value to this one. Okay, and you can say inside or outside here. So from 0 to 100, I want just to choose between 0 and 0.1 inside. And this one, what is this? Well, it's another helper. And so it's like this. When this random value hits this inside this value and is inside this mesh, it will turn this on, this position born. So let's say the particles, okay, here it's inside, so it's inside the mesh and it's inside this value. Okay, so I hope you understand, and of course they are dying inside this mesh. And how to make this in mesh condition. Okay, of course you have to go to conditions, in mesh. Okay, and then you have to go to helpers, node, select the node, and then you have to pick the node. Yes, super simple, and then pipe it here. Okay, So, and how do you make, if you click 2 times, it becomes all the inputs and outputs come invisible, and if you press 2 times again, it will only show the connected ones. So that's why you see it like this. Just remove. Okay, and of course you can go here and show many other inputs, and here the outputs, the available outputs. Okay, so here I've created, so I've deleted the smoke and then created the soft bodies, and the soft bodies have to have a shape, so a geometric instance from a teapot. So what is this? You have operators, shape, geometric instance, and then you can choose any object from 3D Studio Max to become the shape of your particle. Cool. So this is the creation process. Now let's set up the soft body system. Okay, so here I want to apply a gravity force. Cool. So again, the same method. You go and choose the group you want to apply the force. Then again you check force. Oops. Okay, it's pretty dark, I don't see the keyboard. And then again I go to helpers, math 0.3, and connect to the direction. Okay, cool. And then here I say the value, it's -1, and the force applied can be 10. Be careful because the standard value is -9.8, I think, or something like that. And if you apply a negative force with a negative value here, it will do the opposite that you want. So you have to choose if you apply negative here or here. I prefer to make the force positive and then the value and the direction in negative way. But you can change it and put 1 z and then here -100. It's the same thing. Okay, so let's go remove this, and then you apply a force, and then you say, hey, I want these particles, these teapots, to become soft bodies. Okay, and this is really easy. It's just go to operators, bullet physics, and soft body. Okay, cool. That's what I've done. I've connected the particle here, and then we have all the settings for the soft body. Here, the default values usually gives bad results. So the first thing you have to change is the shape matching. So it will try to retain or maintain the shape, the original shape. If you put this to 0, many times it has so many compression that it becomes flat. It doesn't become like this. So this is the first value to check, the shape matching. Okay, sometimes I use volume conservation also, and then the pressure inside. So you have all this all of this on the manual, so you can read it, and for sure they explain much better than I do. And another thing that is really important, it's the how many samples you are using for soft bodies and even for shape collision from TP. So if you use per frame, I could not get these cool results here. It will not be so good in terms of collision and behavior. So I've used per half frame. It's a really low value. And something that I learned not long ago, it's if you this value should be multiple for the frame rate you are using. So the example is like this. I'm working 25 frames per second. In my country, we use this one. So for me, it's even easier to multiply because you just have to multiply by 25. So if I want to go upper levels, then so this would be per half frame 25 here. So I can go 50, 75, 100, and I should stick to multiple from 25. What I've heard is that if you use like 102, sometimes some frames can be badly evaluated, so you can have small errors to big errors, I don't know. So I stick to the information that I read on the or see on the tutorials. So this is it. This is really important for the soft bodies. You have to use this value. I've already used like 300, and sometimes you can go to 500, I don't know. And I've heard that sometimes 1200, but I never went to this crazy values. So here it is. The shape matching, it's really important. Another thing here, blah blah blah. Okay, the margin from collision of the objects, and that's it. As simple as that. Of course, you can check all these values and check what they make. But for now, for this tutorial, for this simple scene, it's like this. And then again, we have the solver. And the solver, it's as simple as going here, check collision, sorry, bullet physics, and voila. Here it is. So here you have to say which group will become soft bodies. Well, not only the soft bodies, but because the bullet physics is a solver, you can make rigid bodies and so on. But here you define the active group, soft, active. Oh, I forgot to tell you that when I'm creating here the soft bodies, I'm creating here the teapots, right? But I have to create the collisions. And the collisions are here. Well, it's like operators, generator, and object to particle. So it's like the name says, you are turning an object to a particle, and I'm using this to become collision. And I've made it's the box here, and I have another box that I hide it. That are the walls, because if they hit the walls, they continue on this path. So I want this to continue on this path, so I've created walls. Let me just unhide all. Okay, and these red walls hit all these objects. Okay, so let's continue. Object to particle. You pick the objects and you have to do that like this. You change this effect also. All the particles are changed at the same time, and then you have to go to say for what group you want them to go. So you have here, I've created soft active, that are the teapots, and the soft collision, that are the objects that are colliding with them. So let's go. You choose the objects, changes effectals, and you change to this group, and then you say object to particle, instance shape, and that's it. All these objects become particles and become available on the solver for the deflectors. So here you define the group from soft bodies, and here you define the collision objects. Okay, and that's it. Then you have the iterations from physics. I didn't touch a thing. I think just change the friction. Why did I change the friction? Because I wanted them to go again in the X. so they can hit this. If I had friction, they will stop here. They would bump and stop here, and I didn't want, so I've lowered this value. And that's it for soft bodies. Okay, so let's see what happens next. Hey, the particles are very happy and are saying, hey, can we become rigid now and break apart and collide? Of course you can. TP lets you. And the genie, Edwin, and its crew, like I said here, because they are really, really awesome, and they are delivering us, the 3D Studio Max users, so many cool and great things. So let's continue. Okay, here, how to create rigid bodies. Let's see. Well, it's the same principle always. First the creation, and here I've decided to change group and not delete, because I want this object, this instance, to be break apart. Okay, so the same system. First I create the dynamic sets here. The first is to create, so I pick the group soft active. Then I have the same rule when goes inside this mesh here, this box, changes the group. And how to create this? Well, it's simple. Again, group, oops, and you choose this one, and then you pick up here the group you want to change. So here it is. When this soft active teapots come inside this mesh, they go to rigid active, and this turns on. So if I didn't have this here, it will be automatically going right away. When they become soft, they become rigid, and I just want that to happen when they are inside this mesh. Very simple. Let's continue. And here again, object to particle to create the collision objects. Again, it's the plane that we have here, this box, and the boxes that are hidden, that are the walls. Okay, then rigid body setup. Okay, so I pick the new born particles, the rigid active, and I use the volume break to break them. Okay, volume break, you have the operators, volume breaker, volume break here. Okay, so cool. Again, you connect here, and here you have a lot of controls, but this is a beginner's tutorial and it's pretty easy. I want to break everything at once, but I could use a light to break them. I could use a texture. I could use many things to break this. Well, so I didn't use anything of that. I just say it's activated 100% when this is born. So that's why when we are here and it's inside the mesh, boom. Okay, and why didn't break here? Because thinking particles analyzes where the particle is and is in the center of it, so it only breaks when it's in the center. Okay, let me just put F4, and here the volume break, you have the settings for and how does it break, how many chunks, and so on. So here I just used a raster of 5%. I've changed the speed in X direction because I wanted to go again to the right. So the initial speed is kind of higher because I want them to go here faster. So I've changed this value and the variation, and that's it. Yeah, there are a lot of tutorials on how to volume break things and how to control. You can even break the volumes with particles. So it's really cool. You should study this operator. Okay, but here it's just a quick view of this. Then the dynamics. Okay, so here's just a little trick. I wanted to say that in the beginning I want them to go up. So I want to give this initial force up, and then I want the gravity to become active later on. So here's the trick. Here it's the, again, you go and pick your group, and then you are going to say what you want to do. So first I choose a value, so a positive z force and x force of 45. So initially they are going 40 with a 45 strength up and to the right, and this will become true on the first 5 frames they are born. So I'm picking up the age, I'm feeding this value here, and then I'm saying when you are inside 0 and 5, the force will be active, it will be on, and the spinning also. So this initial spinning of the particles will be active for 5 frames, and then the rest will be automatically calculated for with shape collision from TP. So this spinning is only active for 5 frames, and this first force also. And then I've inverted this value and applied the gravity force, a normal negative z force. Okay, I applied a little variation to simulate the difference of the mass. If you want, you can go and really use the mass here, but for this, so you can give a mass to each particle and with variation and so on, but here's a little trick to make it easier. So basically we have a 25% variation, so it seems that the particles are lighter than the others or heavier, and that's it. So I hope you understand this. It's again the invert, it's in the helpers math, you have the invert value. So this means that when they are inside 0 and 5, they make this 2 on, and when they are outside, so when they are 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, the gravity is on. So it's a quick trick onto how to make an initial force and then deactivate and activate the gravity. And again, the solver, shape collision from TP, it's much more stable for if you want accurate collisions, and it's really fast. Not so fast as the bullet in many cases, but much more stable, and I use it a lot for rigid body collisions. And here you have the same methods. You go and pick on the operators, the shape collision, SC, and here you have all the, you say, hey, I want to activate rigid active, they will become the shape collision objects, and I want them to collide with the rigid collision that I've created here. So here I create the rigid active, and here I create the rigid collision. Well, that's all the boxes and so on. And here I don't think I've changed anything here to be, yeah, this is pretty standard values for this simulation. Really simple, and it works. And finally, the particles were kind of speechless. But then they asked, can we become liquid? It was our dream since we were kids. And if not too much to ask, can you also mesh me? Okay, this is really cool, and I really am adoring, in love with TP because they are doing a great job and always um, making new stuff, and uh, the liquids are becoming awesome. So let me just, the liquids and the smoke and all the solvers and everything about TP. So here, the liquid. Okay, here I use the same method again. So when it's inside this match, they die. And at the same time, they born. And this time, I was trying to make these particles here to make a liquid to here so they can collide. And it was kind of difficult. So I've decided, no, I'm going to die these ones or to kill these ones. And then I will create in the sphere much more controllable or origin point. So how I did that? So when they are inside this mesh, the regions active, so these ones, they die. At the same time, they start a new event, position born based on the position of a node. And this node is the sphere, okay? And I'm using the face from the sphere, not because if I connected here like this, these particles would born in the center of the axis of the sphere, the center axis. And I didn't want that. I wanted them to born on the faces, so that's why I've used this one. So the position here and the node here. So, and here you have the ability to select vertex, edge, or face. So this is really simple. It's, you go to helpers, position, surface position, and then you go to helpers and standard and node, and you connect the node and the position here, okay? And of course you have to choose here which node you want to pick. Okay, again, the liquids are created here, liquid active. I just want each particle will create 250 because liquids are the same like smoke. If you create too little, it will, well, it will be droplets, and I wanted the flow. So let's see. Here, each particle will create 500 here when they are inside the mesh. Okay, and then you have to create again the liquid collision, and I've chosen the sphere. It's the sphere with, I've just made it with a noise so we could have collisions with animated geometry, so you can see how easy to do is to do something so complex. Okay, then let's set up dynamics. Here I use the same trick. So I pick the group, liquid active, set a timer of 5. This is why did I use the timer? I just wanted, and not the age and the condition threshold, because I wanted you to understand that TP offers you many ways to do the same thing. And sometimes we are creating stuff and okay, I'm going to use a timer, and sometimes, oh, I'm going to use a condition based on the age of the particle, and sometimes you use, well, I've noticed that all the users use different methods. And well, that's really funny. you can use a lot of things to do a lot of different things. So here the liquid active starts a timer. So when the liquid is active, it will start a timer of 5 frames and just one time. And this will turn on the force that you want for 5 frames. So again, it's the same method. I wanted the particles to go up in the beginning where they're born. For 5 frames they have this huge force on X and Z, and then the inverted value will give the gravity, okay, in Z. So for 5 frames they go up on the X, and then they start falling with the gravity, and that's it. So afterwards you have the flow setup. Well, it's just create here a set, the dynamic set. Then you go and pick from the operators flow, the flow group, where you choose the group to become fluid. Okay, so here you choose the solver. Of course you have to create it first so you can pick it up. Then you choose which group will become liquid, and here are all the settings. I will not talk a lot of these settings again. It's something that you will have to try it out. But the spacing, it's really important. The smoothing radius, and of course there are here a lot of values to study. Now the flow boundary, again, this is where you define the objects that will collide with liquids, and it's really simple because I predefine here on the create all the objects I want to collide. So I've chosen these ones. I said go to the group liquid collision with this on object to particle instance shape and so on. So I'm creating particles from these objects. And then on the flow boundary I choose this group as my colliding mesh or groups. Okay, here the friction, I didn't change a thing, I just make it a little bit more bouncy. And of course the solver, it's as easy as going here and flow solver, and that's it. So you create the solver and then you go to mesh. Okay, here I can show you anything about this because I'm using a beta version, so but I can only tell you this. It's really awesome what we are being able to do now with the meshing tool, and of course they lived happily ever after with TP. And this is the end of this tutorial. I hope you like it. And if you have any questions, go ahead, Facebook me or go to Vimeo. So goodbye, see you in the next tutorial or on the Facebook. Bye bye.